of all the assessments, and I'm a little bit of a data nerd, we know this too,
It's fine.
that, I like data, and I like to know that things are scientifically validated.
Yeah.
And for strengths, for me, it gives me great confidence in knowing that it is probably one of the most scientifically validated assessments that there is.
Yeah.
The way that the research that they do, the way that the questions are paired, your unique top 5 make you unique 1 in 33 million.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It really is. And when you think about it, it's like, when you take it into the concept of DNA and what we talk about, how God has created you on purpose, it's like you line yourself up next to 33 million people, and you're that unique. I mean, like, he does make you on purpose.
Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine Podcast. Daron Earlewine here with you, and reminding you every episode of 3 things. God's for you. He's not against you. God's near you. He's not far away. And he's created you on purpose and for purpose. And we're in the midst of this spiritual DNA series, going through every one of the sessions of spiritual DNA and taking a deep dive. And for this week, we brought in our resident specialist with the Strengths Finder coach, Traci Cheatham. Hi, Traci.
Hi, Dee.
And you are a Daron Earlewine Podcast alum.
Yes, I am.
Is this your second or third time on?
Second
time.
Yep.
The Daron Earlewine Podcast has had multiple different names, because it was the Born to Be podcast for a while.
Yep.
And then we just jammed everything into radio theology. It became radio theology for a while. And then COVID happened and radio theology died. And then it became the Daron Earlewine Podcast. I don't know which iteration of the podcast you were on originally.
I think it was actually the Radio Theology Podcast.
I think you're right. It was a good episode. I remember that run of episodes we did, you were part of. There's about 4 or 5 we did in a row there. Were like 4 or 5 of my favorite ones right in a row. So no pressure, but don't screw this one up.
I'll try my best. No guarantees, though.
Yes, it's true. So, Traci, you have been a part of our team. We've walked together now doing spiritual DNA stuff and strength stuff for, golly, over a decade.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to think of our first kind of come to Jesus, have a cup of coffee together would have been sometime around between 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there.
I actually sat through my first DNA at the end of 2010 when I was leaving my corporate gig.
Yeah.
And your dad was actually my table leader. But I think at that point in life, I was a little bit burnt to a crisp, so I didn't appreciate it for what it was. And I think it was probably 2012 that we sat down, maybe 11, that we sat down, because it just kept coming back to me. I'm like, there's something here. This is a really cool program that you were trying to develop and get off the ground. And I'm a, development junkie. So I was like, let's do this thing. It's cool.
So that's a little bit of your backstory, which I love. And you're actually, are in Spiritual DNA. I tell your story about getting to a place where life wasn't working. You come through DNA, and then God took you on about an 8-year journey.
Yeah.
And,
slow learner.
Well, no, you're not a slow learner. It's not that you're a slow learner, but it is. I have people come up to me and say that your story intimidates them because we want an overnight success story. Right. We want to go through spiritual DNA, and then in 8 days, or even, if we're really going to push it, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. We want to figure it all out, life to work. It'd be like, ta-da. And that doesn't happen.
No.
I remember Wayne Jacobson said once in a podcast, he said, here's the deal, God's not in a hurry with you. And that was so freeing to me to realize I didn't have to have it all figured out in 8 days. But if you're on the front side of that journey, it can feel daunting.
For sure.
Of like, this is going to take a while. Yeah. And it has taken a while for you, but not really, because you think about everything that God has walked you through, all the things that you've discovered, all the things that you've helped build, and now what you guys are doing with B23. It's been such a beautiful evolution of purpose, and so much of that comes back to you leaning into discovering and now finding ways to leverage the strengths that God has built in you. So let's talk about that. You are a strengths coach, and Strengths Finders has been a part of DNA for a while now. I remember the first time I took the Strengths Finder assessment way back, I don't know, it was probably in 2004, 5, 6, something like that. It freaked me out because I was like, okay, someone's been following me around and taking stock of what I do, because it was like, oh, this is absolutely how my brain is wired. So talk a little bit about StrengthsFinders, Traci, how you kind of got into it, and well, let's unpack some of the nuts and bolts of the StrengthsFinder assessment and why it's a part of DNA.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you know that I love strengths, obviously. I think that of all the assessments, and I'm a little bit of a data nerd, we know this too, that, I like data, and I like to know that things are scientifically validated.
Yeah.
And for strengths, for me, it gives me great confidence in knowing that it is probably one of the most scientifically validated assessments that there is.
Yeah.
The way that the research that they do, the way that the questions are paired, your unique top 5 make you unique 1 in 33 million.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It really is. And when you think about it, it's like, when you take it into the concept of DNA and what we talk about, how God has created you on purpose, it's like you line yourself up next to 33 million people and you're that unique. I mean, like, he does make you on purpose.
Yeah.
So strengths for me is something that I used, way back in my corporate job when I would develop my teams. And I really became a strength certified coach kind of after, God had kind of given me the vision for B23 and mostly at that point in time to serve as a liaison for you and for DNA.
Yeah.
Because we felt like that it was something that we needed to really invest in and try to grow. So I just love being able to coach people and help them see like their uniqueness that, God's put inside them.
Absolutely. Well, I think when we, when we say that, stat multiple times in DNA is 1 in 33 million. And I think the reality is, and I've done this when I teach DNA live and in sessions, is I ask people to say something unique about themselves, right? Physically. And everybody can, my one ear is longer than the other. I mean, whatever, right? They have something that they can pull quickly. And then to say, what is something like a strength or something spiritual, like something other than physical? What's something unique about you? And most people blankly stare at you and go, I don't know.
Right.
Like, I cannot voice something that's different about who I am other than you. But the reality is, I mean, if you think about the line of 33 million people, I don't know how long that would be. I'm sure somebody could figure out how much space a person is in. It's going to probably get somewhere in London. Okay, let's just guess, right?
Way far away.
Way far away. Like, you could not see the end of that line. Right. It's going to take that many people before we find someone as unique as every person that God has created. And for us to be at a place where we don't know that fact and we can lie to ourselves or let the enemy lie to us that, you know what, you're just like everyone else. There's nothing unique about you. So just go on about wasting your life. And one of the parts I want to share, each one of these episodes, we've shared a clip from DNA. And I want to share part of the intro of the strength session from Spiritual DNA, where I talk about this idea of wasted potential, of what is God more passionate about, sin or wasted potential. And I love this intro. I love this thought, because this was a game changer for me when I began to realize that where the heart of God is for our development, and what sin actually is in its essence, and how it actually does destroy potential. And so let's jump into this clip from Spiritual DNA. You can see kind of the intro of this strength session, and then we'll be right back. What is God more passionate about? Sin or wasted potential? Big question. And if you've been paying attention so far in Spiritual DNA, you're going, he's doing one of those what, how, who things again. I am. But let's get into the Word of God and see if we can unpack some truth about it. We're in Matthew chapter 25, and we're going to look at this parable of the talents. And we're going to connect this to your StrengthsFinder assessment. If you haven't taken the assessment yet, go ahead and watch this video and then go back and take the assessment. But make sure you do this one, because one thing I love about this assessment is it really gets connected. It's probably one of the assessments that connects most our physical and spiritual connection between physical and spiritual DNA, in that it actually is built upon how the hemispheres of our brain communicate. We'll jump into that in just a minute, but let's start with the Bible. Matthew chapter 25, verses 14, starting there. Jesus says, again, the kingdom of heaven can can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one and 2 bags of silver to the other and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. The servant who received 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant who had 2 bags of silver went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who had received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, the master returned from his trip, and he called them to give an account for how they'd used his money. The servant who he entrusted with the 5 bags of silver came forward with the 5 more. Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Then the servant who had been given the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops where you didn't plant and gathering crops where you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. But the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit your money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it. Then he ordered, take the money from the servant and give it to the one who has the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into the outer darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So much to learn from in this passage. What's always stood out to me, though, is the phrase wicked and lazy. Because I don't know about you guys, but I have a short list of what would make like the wicked list. You know what I mean? Like, you can do some bad stuff, and I'd be like, that guy's low character or something like that, right? Or he's got some work he needs to do. But you would have to really go after some stuff for me to be like that. That person is wicked. And then you look at this story, and what did this guy actually do? Nothing. He didn't do anything. But in that moment, the master comes back and he calls him wicked and lazy. So now let's go back to my original question, right? Because in this story, like, God is playing the role of the master in this parable. So when I ask you to begin with, what is God more passionate about, sin or wasted potential? I think what we would probably quickly hit the buzzer and answer is, he's more passionate about sin. The bad stuff I do, he's upset about the bad stuff. All right, once again, going back to that, we're obsessed with what? God's just up there mad, looking to send wrath down on my life for the stupid stuff I'm doing. He's really mad at me. Super mad at what? He's mad about sin, really mad. But it seems like from this passage and from multiple times in even Jesus' life as he was interacting with people, it seems that he was really, really passionate about wasted potential. More than he was just fired up about wrong action. And here is why I think that's true. Because sin is just actions. But the essence of sin and the result of sin is to deconstruct your identity and waste your potential. And we're back from the great land of spiritual DNA. Once again, you can get spiritual DNA at spiritualdna.me. spiritualdna.me, and we're going to have some awesome promo codes for podcast listeners so you can get a discount on the course. But Traci, we're talking about there that so often we get, at least I grew up thinking God was just so bent out of shape about sin because he didn't want us doing bad things.
Totally agree.
Right?
Yeah. For sure.
And in that case, usually for me, I saw God playing the role as my punisher. That was what he was really stoked on, is finding me doing wrong so he could punish me. And you look at so many scriptures, this being one of them, of this idea of, no, God is here empowering us with talents and abilities, and then, or granting them, and then empowering us, use them, multiply them, leverage them. Yeah. And so many times we're like that servant with the one talent, that we're just afraid to fail. We're afraid to be punished. We're afraid of a lot of different things. So we just hide the talents, the abilities, the strengths that he's given us. And that's what brought the passion and the anger of God here, of like, don't waste your life. Yeah. And I know that's something that lights you up, the idea of helping people step out of the place of wasted potential.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, it has been a game changer for me. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of years really truly living in my strengths, and then I experienced death by 1,000 cuts and a lot of, burnout. And it left me in a place of belief that I wasn't unique, that my strengths were not of value and they were not good, and that they caused damage in some ways. And that was disheartening for me to think that I'd built an entire career off of what I felt like, I should be doing. And then all of a sudden, as it kind of got to the end, that it just didn't feel that way anymore. And it took a long time for me to kind of unpack that and kind of get to the understanding of, no, my strengths didn't change. And when I was able to live in my strengths and in my design, I had almost near perfect performance, which is what we know to be true.
Yes.
But then when I had to step outside of my design and I had to lead in a way that wasn't innately in me, it left me feeling really yucky on the other side, and I did not perform well. Yeah. And I'm an Enneagram 8. I know you just did an Enneagram episode. Yeah. So for me, that core lie of I am what I do, was huge. I mean, like I said, it took a long time for me to unpack it and realize that, no, I have great potential in my strengths, and I have to start leveraging them again.
Well, and Traci, if you want, you can go back and do a deep dive into the archives of the Daron Earlewine Podcast and find the episode that we did where you unpacks, in detail some of your journey. But I think there's a couple hurdles, right? One of the hurdles that you're gonna get over by taking spiritual DNA is the ignorance hurdle. Right. I just don't know. I didn't even know I had strengths. Right. Then I think there's another hurdle of disbelief. Like I know, I hear what you're saying. I took the thing, but I just don't see this at work, and that's a part of stepping into it. But in your journey, it wasn't necessarily initial disbelief. It was, I jumped the hurdle of ignorance. I understood it. I leveraged them, but then I went through an identity shaking season of pain, which I was like, it's almost like you couldn't figure out if they still applied. Right. And that may be where some of you are as you're listening, because life isn't easy. No. And it doesn't usually go as planned. No. And so I think when major life situations change, my book that's coming out this year, subtle plug, The Death of a Dream. Yeah. We all go through that. And I think it's at that point where that's where understanding your spiritual DNA is so important, because when you have a dream die and that dream is attached to identity, we can begin to think, I don't know who I am, and I don't know if any of this still applies. And you find yourself there because a lot of your identity was wrapped up in what you were accomplishing. Yep. Like you're saying, Enneagram 8, I am what I accomplished. You were killing it in a big pharmaceutical company. Yep. And then identity shifted and changed. Yep. And then it was like, okay, this is who I was. Am I still that woman? Right. And strengths and DNA helped you chart the course back to yourself. It did. I mean, I think all of DNA did. I mean, like it was, and DNA has evolved. Yeah. And I know you added Enneagram into DNA, and you and I argued about that. We did a couple-year argument. I won. You did, and I'm so glad you did, because honestly, in my own journey, I would say that Enneagram has been a huge part of my healing process. But it was strengths giving, or not strengths, it was DNA kind of setting the tone of the awakening piece of me starting to say, well, wait a minute, if I'm working with you and we're doing this thing together, like I better start putting my money where my mouth is. And I better start really living and start
start actually trying to believe and step into what God says about me.
Yeah.
And so what I think happened, and we talked about that 8-year journey.
Yeah.
I think what happened over the course of that I know what happened over the course of that 8-year journey was like my faith grew. Like my trust in God grew, and I got to see his character and his heart.
Wow, yeah.
And then my belief in myself started to grow.
Yeah.
And it took that process for me to get there. But I will also say along that process, which you kind of referenced too, is that when you do start to step into purpose, like the enemy doesn't want you there.
No.
And so, the attacks come in a lot of ways and shapes and forms. And so getting right in my own headspace and getting right in my mind and in my heart, was a huge part of the journey too, to be able to be mentally tough enough to handle, the attacks and to know that what I was stepping into really was what God was calling me toward.
No doubt. What I'm seeing here, Traci, and I want to go back, if you've been watching in sequential order of the podcast, back the episode we did with Darren Cooper, we talked about the prophetic role in the APAST understanding, and Coop talked about the vertical relationship and the horizontal relationship, and that's what I'm hearing when you're saying that, Trace, is a lot of people go through DNA, and I think they go through it because they want to understand themselves more, right? I want to discover who I was created to be, and I want the horizontal relationships of my life to work, whether that's in business or whether that's at home, whether that's in my marriage. But the true transformation and the true ability to become, like, it's not become who I wanted to be. Right. It's not becoming who, life needs me to be. Like, you're becoming who God created you to be. And a big part of that is that vertical relationship with him. Like you said, is that, you learn some things about yourself that are huge, but to really leverage them, it's about being an ambassador, a reflection of the character and the heart of God and the transformation he brings. And that's such a good bonus point you made. And I think it's so foundational to people being able to step into the DNA process and see it through, whether it's 18 years or 8 years. So powerful. And so let's talk about this, Traci. Let's dig specifically into some strength stuff. I want you to hit us with the strengths are 34.
Yeah, there's
core. Hit us with that, and then I want you to unpack your personal top 5, and let's play there for a minute.
Sure. Well, there are 34 themes of talent. Okay, and a talent is just that naturally occurring process of thought, behavior, feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is an important part of that can be productively applied.
Okay,
and so 34 themes, they fall into 4 categories. You have influencing themes, relationship building themes, strategic themes, execution themes. My themes in my top 5, as I'm getting ready to unpack them for you, fall mostly into the influencing category.
Okay.
So my top strength actually is futuristic. We share that.
Yes, we do.
And so there's pros and cons to that. It's a great process to kind of create the future.
Yeah.
It's hard to set and be in the present sometimes.
Correct.
You and I know that. Thank God for Jim Bernie.
Yes,
And so that's number 1 for me. Number 2 is activator, which is, we share that one too. How do we get in there and we get things done? How do we reorganize resources to make things happen?
Yeah.
Third one for me is relator, and it's being able to relate to others that are different than myself and really start to see the beauty and the uniqueness. But it also is relationally a place where I focus on deep, like small relationships. Like it's not like when someone has relator, they're not going to have 1,000 friends that are super deep. They're going to have their tribe, and they're going to go really deep and be super loyal in that tribe.
Which a juxtaposition there would be, I think my third strength is woo.
It is.
Right? Mm-hmm. Winning others over. So I've got, a football stadium full of people that I've won over to myself or a cause, whatever. And am I going real deep with them? No. Right. Yeah. And that's good to know.
Yeah.
It's tough for me sometimes because I constantly feel like I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
But you weren't supposed to say yeah.
You're not a jerk, Darren.
You're supposed to say no. Because this is twice now on the podcast. The people that are close to me have said I'm a jerk. Jen. And no. But it's good to know how those strengths work because for me, I'm a quick start, win you over. Let's go. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Right. But then I've got another mission, another hill to climb, another person to meet, but that's not how God's created you. You're able to go deep with fewer people, relate to them. And it's great to know that difference for each of us.
Yes, and one thing I would like to speak into in regards to you and your woo, I remember us having this discussion, and it was a little eye-opening for you because you did sit on that space of feeling a little yucky sometimes. Like you were like, gosh, it makes me like, I don't know about this. And I'm like, well, Daron, like you got to release yourself of that because woo is an influencing theme. It's not a relational theme.
Yeah.
And so, like that's how it's designed. Yeah. Winning others over. That's what you do really well.
I think the next thing, the struggle for me was being in my pastoral role, right?
Sure.
Is that after I win somebody over, like, oh, well, he's my pastor, means he's going to remember everything about me and want to come to the hospital and see me and my kids and these things, whatever. And that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. I love people, but I'm not going to visit you at the hospital.
Yes.
Anyway, so go ahead.
My next one is individualization, which is really the strength that focuses in on the unique individual pieces of other people and really kind of challenging and growing and helping people step into strength, which is, kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then last but not least is good old command. And command can bite me in the behind sometimes.
Works very well the type 8.
Yeah, it sure does. Or not. Depends on how it looks. But command, the beautiful aspect of command is that it can create calm and chaos. And it also is exactly what it says, which is it holds a commanding presence. It can come across, though, especially paired with that 8, it can come across as being assertive, aggressive, extremely challenging. And that's something that even in my own strengths development, my own Enneagram work, I've had to really, dial back and make sure that it's there, but it's healthy.
Yeah.
So
those are your top 5. We're not going to have time to go through the whole thing. I just want to whet your appetite because I want you to take spiritual DNA. I want you to start this journey for yourself. But there's 34 of these types. Yeah. Your top 5, the order they are, 1 in 33 million. There's probably the top 10. There may be some shuffling in there, but the bottom half of your strengths, they're never going to be your strengths.
No.
And I think there's such an empowerment in that, Trace, because I know one of the guys that's in my discipleship huddle, his wife, it was kind of a conflict. There was no empathy at all. He just couldn't get there. He's a type 1, right? And she wanted him to feel things, right? Yeah. And he came through spiritual DNA and he was able to go home and go be like, honey, I'm not trying to be this way, right? But empathy was literally 34.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it allowed him to find ways of how can I show up in a loving way for my wife. But it unlocked so much in their marriage where she realized he's not trying to withhold his heart from me. Yeah. It's just, this is how he's wired.
Yeah.
So what I want to do now, Traci, is you've taken these strengths. Yep. You've gone through this process. God has transformed so much in your life. And now you have restructured your entire life to leverage these strengths and with B23 strategies. And what Traci's going to talk you through this letter that they take you through with B23 and being able to develop a true statement, that's not available in Spiritual DNA. It's a bonus thing that you can get by talking to us at B23 Strategy.
Nice plug. Thank you very much.
This is true. But take us through the journey of what's become B23 in the truth statement, this letter, and in that journey, because it's so powerful.
Yeah. The heart behind B23 when, I will say God spoke it over me, was really helping people in power, in position of power, so in leadership or who have influence, to really understand what it means to lead with love. And one of the best ways to do that is to really fully know and understand and build relationship with those that you have the ability to serve. Yeah. And so strengths, as we kind of leverage, and I kind of want to go back to what you said about the top, the middle, the bottom, that 34 report. When you get down to the bottom, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't communicate. Oh. They look at you and like, I just want to be like you and I can't communicate. Well, that's not true. You can communicate, but you're going to have to do it through leveraging your own strengths. And we see all the time, like almost strengths envy and people feeling like that you had mentioned earlier, like they can't even describe what their strengths are. And so part of, the heart as we've developed B23, and even more so, I would say on the individual side of coaching than on the corporate side of coaching, is we wanted to be able to develop this truth statement because what we know about leveraging and leaning and living in your strengths is that you will have near perfect performance over the course of time. And you and I both know that no one wants to sit around and be average.
No.
We all want to be exceptional. Yeah. And I think that there's so much space in life where we look at things and be like, oh, well, I can't do that. Or, oh, well, it's great for them. That's not for me. I hear that all the time when I coach people. And it's like, no, it is for you, because God doesn't create average.
Yes, so
He creates
good.
exceptional.
Yes.
I mean, like, none of us were created. I mean, He's not average. Why would He create average,
Yeah.
So really being able to step in and help people understand that they are unique. So the concept of this truth statement for many, many people is just, it was built with the heart of understanding like the game, two truths and a lie. Because oftentimes we start to believe the lies that either we put on ourselves, that the enemy puts on us, or that others put on us.
Yeah.
And this is a lens to be able to look through, and a statement to be able to read, to say, if I am going to, with any choice in my life, if I filter it through this lens and I can say, yes, it fits in this category, then I know I'm going to perform well in that space. And I think yours is a prime example. Can you rattle off your true statement? Do you?
Oh gosh, I am a captivating, inspirational, influential, something else dreamer. Yes, I can't remember the fourth one. I'm really close.
Yeah.
But
it speaks volumes to who you are and how you show up and what you've been able to create because of it. And so for mine is, I'm an authentic, inspiring, influential, people-oriented leader. And going back again to the fact of wanting to bury my talents, at some point in time, I sat with that statement and I'm like, that's, that's me. I know that's in there. That's who God says I am. I'm afraid to access it. And so when I started to access it again and started to really step into it, then I started to find all sorts of freedom because that's how I'm hardwired.
one of the things I say in the spiritual DNA session about strengths is when we operate in weakness long enough, we begin to believe that we're weak.
Yes.
And man, that is a terrible place to be in.
Horrible.
And, a lot of times when I teach strengths, somebody, probably usually an Enneagram 1 teacher guardian stands up and it's like, well, the Bible says that we're supposed to, that Christ is our strength and our weakness. And I'm like, I'm not saying that we don't have weakness, right? And yes, Christ is most glorified. We're not talking about character development, right? It's coming back to like what you said is like, God doesn't create average.
Right.
Like He doesn't want a bunch of weaklings walking around in life. Like He's given us a spirit of power and love and self-discipline to leverage these strengths that He's given us that reflect character to attributes of who He is and gifts and strengths and abilities He has, to be exceptional, not for our own glory, but for His. It's so key. I want you to share this letter, Trace, because I want people to see the power of putting a lot of the pieces of spiritual DNA together and what it can bring to their life. And I want you to go through DNA, and as you go through this, as you hear this, you may say, you know what, I need to get some coaching with B23, or man, I'd love you guys to come in, to my executive team or my company or my sports team and take us through this. We can do that. We'd love to do that. We are doing that right now. But take us through this letter that you've gone through and that you've put together, and this is something you guys take clients through, Traci.
Yeah, it is something that we take clients through, and it's something that actually has proven to be really impactful and powerful for a lot of people, including myself, to be honest. And I think that this actually came about because, as you had mentioned on a previous podcast, Janelle DeWolf and I partnered together for B23 strategies. And it was through our individual innate ability to coach each other, me coaching her on strengths and her coaching me on Enneagram, that we saw something emerge and we saw this sweet spot kind of come to life. And so we wanted to be able to create something that would capture that sweet spot. So when people were in doubt, when they were not positive of exactly where they needed to go, that they could have it as a reference point.
Love it.
And I also think, like you talk about this all the time, with the concept of purpose, God creating us on purpose and for a purpose, like we were built to do good works. And that's what He's expecting of us. And if we struggle to know where we need to go next, this letter actually kind of provides a due north.
Yeah.
And so I will read this letter as mine, my janky glasses, that one of 47 pairs. Okay. So, dear Traci, always remember that you are an authentic, inspiring, influential, people-oriented leader. To be the best version of who I created you to be, consider the following. Share your visions of a better future. Be the catalyst when others are stuck. Make a decision and get going. Connect deeply with the right people to gain friends for life. Appreciate the uniqueness in each person you meet. Be ready to take charge when others waver. Trust your gut and live life on your own terms. Always have at least 3 options in mind so you can adapt if circumstances change. Strive for excellence and encourage others to do the same. Improve effectiveness and efficiency by reorganizing resources. Honor your values. They keep you on course during tough times. Remember to focus on being emotionally open and available to others, taking initiative and making things happen, seeing the possibilities in and being a champion of others, offering incentives and challenges to bring out the strengths in others, knowing your real power lies in the ability to inspire and uplift people, and mastering self by constantly surrendering to me. This is your story for my glory. Love, God.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Traci, you've created that. It's obviously deep in your soul. How has it brought comfort, empowerment to you?
It's almost like a security blanket in some ways, because I think that, when, like, I look at you, I think that like one of the differences between the two of us and our journeys is that, I've been so proud of you and your ability to constantly strive for the future and not be afraid of it and just try, and keep trying until you get it right. And I think that for a long time, like I said, I buried my talent because I was scared of it. And this gives me almost the security of knowing that if by chance I don't on any given day believe what God has said about me for myself, that I can read this letter and know that's who he's created me to be. And I can then pivot and figure out like that last line, mastering that self-surrender, pivot and kind of have that almost compassionate curiosity, with the Spirit to say, like, what's preventing me from feeling this way today? And it continues to give me the ability to walk forward and to continue to create what it is that he's calling me to create.
I love it. And listen, this isn't special for Traci.
No.
Like, there's one of these, and Traci has it, and you can't have it because you're lame, right? No. Like, you can. There's a letter waiting for you to write from God about who he's created you to be, that can be and do exactly what Traci said. And life is hard.
It is.
Walking this journey out to become what God's created us to be. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not easy. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon.
It is a marathon.
And
it's lifelong.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why we do the freaking podcast every week, right? That's why we've been doing it for years. That's why I'm tired of talking about this. I was almost this week, Jen almost threw something at me across the office. I was like, I got to talk about different stuff. I'm bored. I need something new. I've been talking about purpose and people and DNA for 30 years. I'm done. And she was like, you shut your mouth, right? No,
right.
Like you have a new book coming out. You have a new course. There's your new, but there's the Enneagram 7 in me, right?
Yeah.
Of like, I got to get something new. I need some freedom, whatever. And it's like, no, come back to who God's created you to be. Settle down. You're fine. But we want this for you because God's created you for it.
Yeah.
Because of the 3 things we say every week.
Yeah.
God's near you. He's not far. He's for you, not against you. He's created you on purpose and for purpose. And the peace, the purpose, the passion that comes from being able to say, I know who God's created me to be. When life, when failure, when the gremlins inside my brain tell me I'm not, like, I can come back to this and go, no, God, I'm going to choose to believe what I know is true about you and what you've helped me discover that's true about me. Yeah. And I love it, Trace. It's been such a joy to walk this journey with you. Thank you for believing in me and what we could create a long time ago. And I'm so excited to see where things go with the new launch of Spiritual DNA with B23. If people want to get connected with what's going on with B23, how can they get connected to you guys?
B23strategies.com is the best way to see what we're doing and connect with us. And it has been my honor and my pleasure, honestly, to be able to walk on this journey with you. And it has changed my life completely. And I can't wait to see what the future holds, because I think the best is yet to come.
I couldn't have said it better myself. All right, guys. Traci Cheatham, the one and only, B23strategies.com. Go check it out. And until we talk to you again here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast, remember the three things. Say it with me. God's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far away, and He's created you on purpose and for a purpose. We'll see you guys next time.